Hello, this is Julian with Coffee Reviews, and today we'll be reviewing the Mchana Natural Processed Kenya from Onyx Coffee Lab. And there's the bag right there. If you hear a little bit of rattling, that's because we saved a couple of coffee beans on this one, but Onyx, based out of Bentonville, Arkansas, and this coffee right here was featured in our most recent blind taste test rankings video, where it did finish first place out of 5 Onyx coffees on that day. And if you watched that video, then you saw that it finished first because it was the most tropical, fruit, sweet forward cup of coffee on that table. Very distinct, very unique, very complex, that it helped it stand out from the other coffees. So it's going to be interesting to see if it remained our favorite of those 5 coffees. This right here is day 13 of this coffee. The recipe we went with for this coffee was a 16:1 water to coffee ratio brewed at 205 degrees Fahrenheit through the V60. Now, interestingly, this is the only coffee that they don't have a brew guide for on their YouTube channel, so we went with the recipe that they use for a lot of their other coffees. Onyx themselves is a light medium American for the roast profile, and let's start discussing this coffee. All right, it's day 6, blind taste test day, and again, it could be described as really tropical, fruit forward, just off of that first impression. Very standoutish on that first try. The experience was a little bit of a roller coaster though, as it started out very tropical fruit forward, and then it went somewhat vegetal, and then it went to a very strong citric finish. I mean, just this pretty distinct roller coaster, as these flavors were so different and unique and pronounced at the same time when you were drinking this cup of coffee that you just got so many different experiences. But say it was a pretty positive first impression. Anytime you catch my interest with a cup of coffee, it leaves a pretty positive first impression. Day 8, we'll say right from the start, it's a very intense cup of coffee. It's a very heavy cup of coffee, a very distinct cup of coffee, as it's simultaneously complex with some herbal florals as well as a heavy tartness as the coffee cools down. That was a very consistent theme throughout drinking this coffee. There's one flavor note I really want to emphasize. It's that green apple that they have listed on here. There is a very strong tart green apple in this cup of coffee. Quite complex though. Day 10, that's when we went over and started brewing it with the V60, and I think I like it better with the V60 as it just kind of gives a little bit more structure and focus to this cup of coffee. As again, it's very tropical fruit forward before cooling down into an extreme citric-like cup of coffee. It's not as herbal or floral in this sense, but I think that's a good thing because it, again, just kind of gives it a little bit better structure. Really tart, primarily thinking, again, that distinct tart green apple. I feel like that this was even more structured when brewed this way. Day 12, the potential priming effect was in play on this day, as they have a mineral flavor note listed on here and could definitely sense quite a fair bit of mineral right at the start of this cup of coffee, and that's why we made a note of it. But then again, as you would expect, the coffee becomes a very tropical sweet cup of coffee, as that's the kind of the way that this roller coaster works, as it starts out very tropical sweet, and then it finishes off this very citric cup of coffee as strong citrus once again, that very distinct tart apple very much there in the finish as the coffee has cooled down. All right, let's go ahead and put up the tasting wheel so you can see what we were getting. And here we have 3 level 5s, so we have to go through those real quick. The finish, yeah, this one was the most lasting finish of those cups of coffee, which is interesting because, as we mentioned, all 5 of these Onyx coffees have had very lingering, lasting finishes. So this one having the most lingering and lasting finish, it should really be a testament to just how strong the finish in this cup of coffee was. Sweetness level 5, and again, all of these coffees have been really sweet cups of coffee, so the fact that this one's even sweeter than those other cups of coffee, yeah, that will tell you all you need to know about this coffee. It's a very sweet, long-lasting cup of coffee. And then the citrus fruit, they have mandarin orange listed on here. I'm not gonna lie, I don't know how often I was experiencing that, but the flavor in this coffee is by far most citric, and we always like to lump especially the tart apples in that citric category, as it's the one that it fits for the most relative to stone fruit or berry fruit. So that's why it's definitely at a level 5. That citrus fruit, whatever that citrus flavor is, it's very much at level 5. It's very, very strong. But other things worth noting, let's see, cleanliness level 3. Anytime there's a natural processed coffee that's at a level 3, that's pretty good, especially when it's a natural processed Kenya. That's pretty good, bringing in a level 3. Acidity still higher than normal. Could have probably even bumped that one up to a level 4, but I think I like it best at a level 3. Fair bit of body, especially through the V60, so level 3 on that as well. Bitterness, that's probably going to be from the tart apple, so that's why it's up there. Not coffee bitterness on that one. But just like with a lot of these other coffees, there's at least a level 2 for everything in this cup of coffee. Saltiness is up there. It's a pretty salty cup of coffee as well. Fair bit of berry fruit too. Ever so slight stone fruit. Not sure that there's too much else worth noting about that. Maybe the florals could have been pushed up when brewed to the Chemex, but for the most part, I actually quite like the way that this tasting wheel looks even on this day. All right, overall thoughts and impressions of this coffee. I liked this coffee. This was still my favorite cup of coffee out of all those Onyx coffees that we tried, and I think a lot of that has to do with just how interesting this cup of coffee is. It is a very strong cup of coffee, so as you've seen from that tasting wheel, it skews very heavy in a lot of directions, but I think that's a good thing because it just made it so unique, and it wasn't overbearing. It didn't have booziness or fermentiness, and it didn't have too much savoriness. So those things are things you might have been expecting from a natural processed, and especially a natural processed Kenya, but given that they weren't strong at all, I think it by far exceeded my expectations. So this one was a standout coffee. It's not as good as the Ruby Batian in my opinion. The Ruby Batian was a really, really special cup of coffee, and it was very strong on those stone fruits. But this one right here, kind of skewing towards that interesting tart apple, which is necessarily my favorite. Not the biggest fan of apples. It was still really, really good. I don't want to underemphasize how much I actually did enjoy this cup of coffee, as I enjoyed it so much that I saved just a little bit to try it again in the future, as I'm curious to see what this coffee might become in the distant or near future. Type of person I would suggest this coffee to. If you really like green apples, I kind of want to push you towards this one. This one was so strong, just very, very heavy in that sense, but very sweet cups of coffee and very lasting cups of coffee. This has so many of those things, but again, it's also a complex cup of coffee because there are quite a fair bit of other things in this cup of coffee. So you're looking at this tasting wheel, yeah, there is at least a level 2 for stuff, so you're going to be experiencing a fair bit more than you might be expecting from something this out there. But I think I'm going to leave this review at that. If you've had an opportunity to try this coffee, would love to know your thoughts and impressions of it as well. If you're enjoying the content, give this video a like and subscribe if you're not already subscribed. This right here has been a review of the Mchana Natural Processed Kenya from Onyx Coffee Lab. Thank you for watching.